It's a subject I don't really broach too often, arrows. And I got to thinking about it because of that. And all you need to do, just do a search on the interwebs for 7,000-year-old bowstring and arrow found in Spain. And you will find that scientific article about that bow, or the arrow and the bowstring. How did I get to the bow? But anyway, arrows. I'm going to first talk about the composites with river cane, Phragmites. Now, if you're in North America, I'm sure that you've heard of invasive Phragmites, but there is also a native Phragmites. It doesn't cause the damage along shorelines as the invasive. And main shaft, river cane, foreshaft, hardwood. And so you get this kind of naturally weight forward kind of shaft, even without a stone point. Incredibly tough, easy to repair. I had to repair Darren's arrow. He sent me a couple of these things, and I freaking abuse these things. They hit rocks, bounced off of trees. And the sinew on the backside came off, and it split quite a distance up. And so I just threw glue in there, hide glue, and then rewrapped it. Now it's good to go. Wonderful. One of the kind of composite arrows. Another one that I like to do is a footed shaft. You might say, well, that's a crappy arrow because it's got that big thing there. But you split. This is the main shaft. This is the foreshaft. Different kind of wood. This is a lighter conifer, and then this is walnut. You just split the main shaft. Make a chisel in your foreshaft. Wet it. I always hot water, steam it over a kettle or something. Bind it so it's not going to continue to split. Just jam that in there with glue, and once it's dried, making sure it's very straight, just finish those off, and what you have is this mysterious chisel cut in the main shaft and then the chisel on the foreshaft, and people wonder, how did you make that? It's so accurate. You know, your joinery there, it's a trick. Just split it and jam it in there. And in fact, when we're talking about ancient arrows, yes, 7,000 years. Stuff like this, as old if not older. They were using footed shafts a long time ago. And that was surprising. It's like, oh my gosh, why didn't they just use a shaft? Why did they go to the trouble of that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. You consider, which I've done. I've repaired arrows that the front end is broken, so instead of throwing them away, because the fletching is still good, and the notch, you know, with ancient technology is kind of hard to do, why throw the arrow away? Why not just repair it by footing it? See? Maybe not have thought about that. And then there's just, let's see here. Let's just talk about this Port Orford right here. In this discussion of an arrow shaft, you can break it into three types of arrow shafts. And regionally, there's different favors of these, but there's this same diameter all the way through. And I've got bones with holes that I bored through that I'll use for sizing, because you don't naturally go out and I'm gathering red osier en masse, you know, and you bind them in groups of 7 for the preliminary straightening, because they're always kind of wobbly. And if you take 7, they like to stick together, and you bind them really tight and let them cure for a while, just like bow wood. But anyway, they're all different diameters. So I've got this bone that I can wear around my neck on like a rawhide little thingamajigger, and it's too big. Scrape, 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 and I work my way down until I've got shafts that are the same stinking diameter. Number 1. Number 2, which I have done, you taper them from the back, smaller diameter, to the front. Weight forward. And ballistically, maybe they fly better. It's like having a cat in here, except, yeah, meow. Barreling, which break them into thirds. It's a big West Coast thing, like Isha and the other native peoples along that coastline. taper it, gets bigger, 2/3 from the front, or 2/3 from the back, then it goes this way. That's barreling. So you can have constant diameter, weight forward, simple taper, and barreling. Shafting material. Port Orford cedar. Okay, I'm going to use the same thing. Sitka spruce. You're too smart for me. The reason why I favor Sitka spruce is the toughness, and it's still just about the same weight. You want a nice light arrow that stays straight a long time? Port Orford cedar, whack. It's like hitting a tree. Broke. Sitka spruce, beat that tree. You're not going to hurt that arrow shaft. I'm sorry if that was a rough demonstration, but you had to hear it. And then footing it. I like that. Let's see here. Port Orford. Dogwood. And I even have kind of a bulbous tip here. It's hard to see with the sinew, but I made it kind of like a plain style where, you know, pinch grip. So you have this thing to pinch against. But yeah, this is neat. Oh, you're saying. What do you see? 1, 2, 3. I also have a bone that has kind of a shape that'll follow it with this sharp point in it, which I groove them. And there's conjecture, and I corrected a museum person. I go to this museum and I'm looking at the collection of Native American archery stuff. And she was like, and they used to put these grooves in here for some reason I'm not really sure of. And I was like, okay. I didn't pick up the shaft, but pretend to pick up the shaft. Maybe I did. Maybe she let me handle it because I seemed to know what I was talking about. I go, there's kind of a couple reasons why they do it. Because she called them blood grooves. So let the blood flow. You know, really? That's not going to be that effective. Yeah, the animal ran out of blood because there was grooves in the arrows. No. One reason, probably the major one is, let's talk major and minor. But the minor one could have been the original reason, is that it gave mojo to the arrow, because they would call them lightning grooves sometimes, because they would kind of twist them and make them look like lightning from the sky, right? That very well probably was the original reason for doing it, was mojo, power, magic, you know, with your arrow. But then they discovered that if they groove those things, before they heat harden them, those grooves act like spines that collect a certain amount of heat. Now you can see that this arrow may be a little bit warped. But this arrow has been sitting in my quiver for 30 years. And it could be a lot more warped. You know, if I didn't groove them. Whenever I do red osier shafting, and parallel, except for I work down the last end so I can always have that bulbous tip, I always groove them. When I viburnum, wild rose, and all this other stuff. Whenever I make shafts and I work them down to the diameter, I don't just random sizes. I'm kind of particular that way. I always groove them before I heat harden them. And it keeps them straighter a lot longer. Are there any other things? Oh, this is a little... This is horseweed. I didn't know I had any in my quiver. This, my friends, is my favorite, my absolute favorite material for starting fires. There's always the question, bow drill, hand drill. I like the idea of hand drill because if you're, seriously, it probably is not going to happen in my life, but I like knowing I could make fire if I didn't have my trusty orange Bic lighter, by making fire with a hand drill. And the reason why I don't favor the bow drill is, what do I use for a cord? You know? One of the best things I found is deer rawhide, but maybe I don't have any. And if I'm going to carry deer rawhide for a bow drill, I might as well carry a ferro rod or a lighter. So it's important to be able to do like this. I came up with a cheat. I might have invented this. I'm sure I'm not the first person that did this, but I'm the first person I'm aware of that has done this. Is there's the issue. You go down and you have to go back up and you have to go back up. And I'm like, why don't I just take a block of harder wood and put a little divot in there and just hold it in my teeth so I can bear down on the shaft, and I don't need to keep resetting my hands, so I get a constant. And it works. When I was doing story time around the campfire at Thornswift, the nature preserve that I managed, many times I would start the fire for the adoring fans with my hand drill, and I shaped it, you know, and it's one of those things where you might want to bore a hole through it. And I also have what do you call those drills that have the rock that you shaped for the flywheel, you know, hang it around, you know, custom shape and wear it around your neck. And if you don't have that, if you woke up one morning and you walked off into the woods and now you need to build a fire, you always carry a knife, right? You can make one of those blocks and away you go. Anyway, that is all. That is my treatise on arrows. And I didn't even touch upon the fletching part. You can see this. A friend of mine, Warpath, G at Warpath Archery, he used black thread for that. But you can see that I always do mine with sinew. And it's the same thing. And the English did that too. And Darren, I'm so sorry, Darren, I forgot your last name. Put it in the comments if you're watching this. Did the same thing, and I gotta say, you know, if you want the ultimate and tough arrows, now I'm not gonna say buy them from me. I don't sell arrows generally because I charge a lot of money for them. And I'm a cheapskate. But Darren makes the most amazing arrows. I wish the other one is lost in the woods somewhere, but the two arrows he gave me, I just freaking abuse those things to no end, and the other one would still be as good as this one. I mean, literally. I did it arrows against a rock of death with his arrows. And it was a big ass rock that I'm like shooting arrows into and watching them shatter, and Darren's arrows, they just don't die. Well, that is my plug. Thank you.